discuss the concept of what? This? Oh, I have a whole skeleton actually. Um, yeah, it is pretty neat. This is, oh yeah, well wait till after Halloween's over. You can get one from the well, it used to be called the Anatomical Chart Company. I think they were bought out by somebody else. And I got a bag of bones for like, I don't know, it was like 40 or $50. And then I got a whole sack of miniature skulls. And let's see, what else did I get? Let me just turn off everything. I'm going to order a new computer pretty soon. It's supposed to be a lot more powerful. That's going to not choke on my. I talked to the guy at length. I'm still not convinced. I feel like I need more feedback from people who know about audio. Oh, I know what it is. It's Word. Word always chokes things up. We can quit Photoshop too. Sorry, Photoshop. I think everything else is closed. This should make it run a little better. Okay. Okay. Yes, this is a hand. And these are, we'll go over the bones of the hand. And there's gnats in here, and it's making me freaking crazy. I don't know where they come from. I think I took a bunch of plants in from outside because it was freezing. I think they came in with the plants. So this is the left hand, and this is my helping hand. You see, this is my extra hand. Everybody needs an extra hand. So this is the humerus. What's nice about the humerus is that it has, these are the epicondyles, which I'm always talking about, drawing the epicondyles. If you show your elbow, you can see my elbow right here. I'll put on another camera. That's what I will do. To give you a good overview of the bones of the hand, and similar for the feet, although I don't have an articulated foot handy because it's still attached to the skeleton. What? Oh, I know. I know what I'm doing. I'm going crazy. That's what I'm doing. Order, top. Okay, there's a nice shot of that bone. Okay, so here we have enough to make you ill from all different directions. The humerus, which has these bony landmarks, which are the epicondyles. These are the ones that you stick out on either side of your elbow, the ones that, like this. This is the ulna, which is the bone on your elbow that you can elbow people in, or if you can break it. Pumpkins, yeah, I got pumpkins. You want pumpkins? I got a pumpkin right here. The arm joint is really interesting. I mean, the elbow joint, because it's a two-part joint. It gives us the ability we have to rotate our wrist has nothing to do with the wrist. Rotate the hand. It has nothing to do with the wrist. Wrist itself, if you hold the arm bone straight, you can't turn your hand. There's nothing you can do for that. It's actually the radius, which is this bone right here. This on the outside of the elbow is the radius, and it has a little ball and socket joint, and it rotates so you can pronate or supinate your hand. Pronate is to lie down, like face down. Supinate is to like lie back in a supine position. So you can always remember supinate and pronate in that regard. This is the ulna, which is a hinge joint. So you have a combination joint here. You have a hinge joint and a rotating ball and socket joint, which gives you lots of flexibility in your arms and hands. Now, most animals still do have this two bones in their front of their legs, on the bottom part of their legs, past what would be the elbow, although in some animals it's fairly fused. I actually knew a child that was born without the radius. He didn't have a radius, so he couldn't rotate his hand. He only had the something else weird happened. They had to fuse it at any rate. He was missing a bone, so he had limited mobility in his arm, and they had to just. Hmm? Oh, really? For a missing bone in the forearm? Yeah, it's amazing when you think about it. Um, this little lump right here that you see in the radius is actually where the bicep connects. So your bicep is a two-headed muscle, biceps. It has a long head and a short head, and both of those originate in the shoulder blade. One goes over the shoulder joint and one goes under the shoulder joint. The biceps comes down the front of the arm and attaches to the radius, and also has some fascia or some ligaments that attach kind of around the forearm. So the biceps, which we think of as the upper arm muscle, isn't attached to the upper arm at all. It bypasses both joints. It's a two-joint muscle that goes past two joints. This little it looks like a little boat area is where another underlying deep muscle lies. That's kind of a pillow for the biceps. On the back, you would have the triceps, which is a three-headed muscle, also originating on the triceps originates on the scapula. I don't know if I'm not sure if there's a head on the humerus or not. I think it's only on the scapula. But it has three heads that come down and flatten into a tendon, and the tendon goes around the elbow. So if you think about it, how do you straighten your arm? This is the cool thing, is that muscles can only contract. They cannot extend. So in order to straighten your arm, you can't push your muscle. You can't push your muscle out. You can only contract the muscle on the back of your arm, which all it wants to do is bring the forearm closer to your shoulder, but it can't because it doesn't go that way, right? So extension is a contraction of the triceps, and contraction is the biceps. So every muscle has an alternate muscle that works the other side. And that's pretty much true for every part of your body, from your littlest finger down to your whole torso. Okay, so from there, we have a lot of flexors that attach up and around in the upper arm and in the humerus that start out as muscles and all narrow down into tendons. As everything narrows down, this is one thing I was commenting a lot on students today, is that when you're drawing the body, the muscles of the body, everything tucks in around the joints. Even on really heavy people, or, well, I could say as an exception on really, really skinny people, their joints might protrude, but nevertheless, all the muscles come together in a bundle close to the joint and then spread out again as they go out, and then they join up again. So everything turns into tendons as you get down into the hand. So there's a strip of ligament that holds everything down, sort of like a bungee cord, and then all these muscles. And so if you wiggle your fingers, you can see your forearm wiggling in different places. Oh, this interesting thing about this little lump on the radius. If you hold your arm like so, and you flex your biceps, and you pull your fist up. Okay, and when you rotate your wrist, you can just about see my. I'm not pulling my arm this way. I'm just rotating it. Can you see how the biceps is moving? All I'm doing is rotating my arm. So the biceps actually assists in that rotation. So that's sort of an interesting little side bit there. Okay. The wrist has 8 bones. On this particular model, 2 of them are fused, which was really confusing. And honestly, I can't remember which 2 were fused. I think it's these 2 here. There's the pistiform, which is on the outside. This is the hamate. I don't know all of them by heart. This is the saddle joint. This one here, this is actually It's a very complicated bone, and this is the one that if you have trouble at the base of your wrist, like I do, it's this bone right here that's causing the trouble, the cartilage in this bone, because it's a very complicated joint. It not only bends like this, but it goes this way. So it moves all kinds of ways. The range of motion that gives us our unique capabilities as humans comes from this. Well, it wears out. Yeah. So yeah, you can wear this out pretty badly, and well, the fingers I think because they are under a lot of stress, they tend to acquire arthritis. And I also found out that arthritis often occurs in the places of old injuries. So if you have like wrenched your shoulder, pulled your shoulder out of joint, chances are you're going to get arthritis in that joint, which sucks. But anyway, so these are the 8 wrist bones, or the carpals, and these bones are the metacarpals, or the long bones of the hand, and then these are the phalanges, or a single is a phalanx, and many are phalanges. And you have proximal, which are the ones closest to the hand, and distal, which are the ones furthest from the hand, and the medial. Now, if you notice something interesting about the hand, is that the thumb only has 2 joints, as a distal and a proximal, whereas all the other fingers have 3 joints. And that's true of your feet as well. So I don't know why, but the fact is that's the case. So when you hold your hand like this, you'll notice that the hand is very interestingly proportioned. The length of your palm is the same as the length of your middle finger. There is some scientific calculations, or maybe it's metaphysical calculations, about the width of the hand versus the length of the hand. Some strange things that tell you what kind of a person you are, or what kind of an element that you portray, like water or fire or air. So there's 2 tendons on your thumb, which this one is here because this joint is a little bit swollen. You don't see it as well on this side. And this is called the snuff box. So a little joint, and then you have the same thing on your toes. These 2 super strong tendons that control the thumb. And then there's a few muscles in the hand that aren't really big, the palmar adductus and the brevis, and a bunch of other ones. And then there's little tiny muscles that go in between, and there's little tiny muscles that are in between each fingers, but most of the movement of the hand is done by the flexors and extenders in the wrist and arm. So remember, you can't push, you can only contract. So think about that whenever you're moving your hands. How do you spread your fingers out? Well, you can't push them out. You actually have to use all these muscles on the side to pull them out. It's really interesting. So the same is true of the foot. Except the interesting thing about the foot is that it bears a lot of weight, and especially if you run, it adds even more weight. So the way the foot is constructed creates a shock absorber. Okay, so let's just go draw some hands. I have got a website that will allow us to draw some hands. This will be a good thing. If you want to study the hands, I recommend George Bridgman. He is awesome. And I went to the Rockwell Museum last week and saw a show called The Keepers of the Flame. No, not that one, this one. The Keepers of the Flame. And it was Wyeth, I think it was N.C. Wyeth, Norman Rockwell, and Maxfield Parrish, who I just adore. And, well, hey, Kristen, haven't seen you in a coon's age. How you doing? Both hands and feet, both genders. And we'll just start with some 1-minute ones. And the only problem with this is that the images are not that great because they are, the lighting is not very good. But generally, when you want to start drawing a hand, you're going to, I always block it in. So remember that the length of the palm is about the same as the length of the fingers. So if you can divide the hand up there, and the thumb just goes just past the bottom joint of the first finger. So if you can get those three main elements of the hand in your 60 seconds or whatever you're doing, you can do all kinds of things that just suggest a hand without getting into great detail. So whatever you do, don't try to do this with a hand because that won't work. That never looks good, and ever, not even on Mickey Mouse. But the palm of the hand is sort of like a wedge, and then the fingers are the same length as the palm. So we're just doing like quick gestural studies. Here's the wrist comes in. It's almost a box-like, the wrist, and then the wedge shape of the hand, and the thumb is almost like a separate entity. So you can treat the thumb as separately. So I never try to draw around the fingers. I just draw one side of the finger and let the other side of the finger be defined by the finger next to it. So actually, 1 minute is probably too much for most of these hands. If they had better lighting, oh, feet. Okay, we can do feet. Feet are similar to hands, except for the fact, take this out of the way. They are, of course, walked upon. So I would do at least put in a little bit of the leg, and we can talk about ankles and stuff. It's a really cool thing to talk about. And hard to talk, draw at the same time. Ankles are the major bony landmarks of the feet, and the toes will tend, just like the fingers do, they tend to go in an arc. You can see this particularly a large bulge part on the arch of the foot where the bones arch up and make that like shock absorber. If only we had good lighting. I will always complain about that. You'll get so tired of hearing me say that. It's still the box of the hand, the arm, the thumb. Fingers will almost always line up, so you can pretty much count on the knuckles lining up on the fingers. There's a thumb right here. Here's the other hand. Look at all the way we can move our arms and hands. It's quite amazing. When it gets right down to doing fingers, I usually, depending on how much time I have, revert to indicating bits of shadow and light to define the form. See how the palm of the hand is like a wedge? And it actually is a wedge that arches around too. We've got so much flexibility in our hands. It's quite astonishing. Make sure that you include the wrist whenever you draw the hands, just like the ankles. It's one thing I can't stand is seeing the arm just disappear into the wrist with no stopping. This thing is in the way. More feet. some people don't have much of an arch in their foot, which gives them that whole flat foot thing. Remember that the heel, calcaneus of the heel, is the bony part that sticks out. And those of you that are studying animals with me, you know that the quote-unquote backwards knee on animals is really just the heel bone. So here's the toes all arching together. There's the arch of the foot. Always make sure that you don't draw your foot flat like this because it can't be flat. It's got an arch in it. Often less is more. Sometimes you can just suggest the foot or the hand without going into extreme detail, and it's totally fine. Oh my goodness, this fits right in our face. That's a little unpleasant, but okay, you can do this. This could be like a great worm's eye view shot of somebody's dirty feet. You see the ball of the foot here, toes arching all in a line. His arch of his foot's a little fat there. And then the heel. So that actually the distance between the ball of the foot and the heel is even less than that because it's very foreshortened. Getting the heel almost straight up in our face here. I've heard of people losing their thumbs and replacing them with the big toe of their foot because you need your big toe, but not as much as you need. You need your big toe, but not as much as you need your thumb, apparently. So here we go with the wedge, and then the thumb being a separate entity, and then the fingers. So if you spent like half an hour every day and just drew a ton of hands, you would start to get much more comfortable. Most people freak out when they have to draw hands. They just can't deal with the complexity of it. You break it down into essentially simple shapes, and it's not so bad. Mine look like crap, but I haven't warmed up yet, so it'd be nice to me. See if I can do the bottom one. I'm not going to have time. Do the next one. Switch these to 2 minutes. That's boring. Okay. Almost certainly you can block in a foot with a sort of a wedge shape like so. Here's the heel, the ankle. You can see the tendons rising up on the back of the foot. I don't know if they took a picture of him jumping or if he's hanging from something. Overlaps are really good too. So we can see this other ankle bone. We can also see tendons actually define the feet quite a bit. That's an overlap. Oops. Okay. Hyperextended elbows. Doesn't look like much. They think they're going to be clever trying to make me do this thing. Overlaps, overlaps. Remember, overlaps are your friend. Overlaps can solve a lot of problems. Okay, I'm going to move this to 2 minutes. Stupid gnat. I got somebody's knee in there as well. See how the calf overlaps the ankle, which overlaps the heel. You get some of those overlaps in there. Sometimes you can pull off a passable foot without too much effort. You can usually lump the little toes together. It'll be really nice. They give me some good light. I should be happy. Little toes are almost, they're always the weirdest. They're always like half curled under. And put shoes on her just because we want, just because we can. Go ahead and put sandals on. So there you go. Use those straps to define the roundness of the form. Okay, next. That's an interesting foot. Knuckles, toe knuckles. The foot kind of bends in the middle. It's got a little flexibility. Some people can pick things up with their toes. So it's still a matter of like blocking it in. If you're still having problems visualizing the foot or the hand, block it in as best you can with a three-dimensional shape. So this actually, ankle kind of goes here. And there's the overlap of the bone, and the calcaneus here. A little bit of an overlap here. Then tuck the toe. Then the next toe. Then the next toe. And then the next toe. And I've got 4 toes. I did it. I got the right number of toes. Sometimes I end up with one too many or one too few. Don't need to put too much detail. Like I wouldn't, don't go into too crazy detail on the toenails and things because usually there isn't as much to see as we think. You really don't see the toenail that much. Maybe just a little shadow spot where the toenail goes. Could put in the knuckle, the bunion, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So another block it in. First thing you want to do. So here's our arm, there's the hand, and the thumb is a separate entity. One finger, 2 fingers, thumb, and these 2 fingers. You can get not too bad of a passable hand. There should be more overlap than I've got. Put the rope on there just for kicks. Put the bracelet on. Always helps to add a little form. I would shadow those fingers and then shadow the palm of the hand. This shadow here. You can almost get the cylindrical forms of the fingers there. And everybody has such unique hands. Hmm. What is a 4B doing in my pencil stack? I can always tell. They're too hard to draw with. Six B. Well, for this stuff, I only use 6B. I only use a 4B if I'm doing like a super rendered illustration and I need a super light charcoal. I don't even own any 2Bs anymore. Lots of wrinkles and things on the feet and hands that you can use to help define the three-dimensionality of it. There's always these weird, like, wrinkles in the foot. All the wear and tear happens on this part. It's always funny looking to look at them out. I draw them and I'm not thinking about them, and then I look at them and they just look weird. So I would put in the calf because it's a pretty significant part of the foot here. She's got feet like mine, kind of wide, and I have wide feet. Ping pong paddles, duck feet. They've been called all kinds of things. People think we're going to lose our little toes, but it's been a couple million years of evolution and we still haven't lost our little toes. So I don't think they're going anywhere. Actually, they're quite useful. They help balance. If you know have any friends or relatives that have lost toes to diabetes, you'll know that it does affect how well they can walk. Must be cold out. The heat just came on. I'm going to scroll through and see if I can find some with better lighting. Oh, here's a good one. So here's a hand that has a curve in it. So you could still use that wedge shape, just make it curve. Then the fingers go like so. It's 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you can see the tendon stuff here. There's different things that go on in the wrist too, genetically. Some people have different configurations of wrist stuff. I forget the details. So notice that the skin folds up around. So my teacher from college used to say, no Farmer John fingers, no sausage fingers. Your fingers should never look like this. They should be flat on one side, and then they have a little fat, especially the tips of the fingers have a little fat on the pads, and then a little knuckle, and then a tiny little bulge, and then the knuckle. So they very specific, you know, things. Ooh, see, there's the wedge shape again, and this curls up to take about half of that, and then the thumb, completely separate entity. So start thinking that way when you're drawing your hands if you're having problems, because the thumb is a separate part, has its own existence separate from the hand. See how everything tucks in at the wrist, swells out, and then tucks back in at the elbow. There's your elbow bone there, and there's the epicondyle that we were just talking about. There's a flat area, then the bicep bulges because it's flexed. Ah! I love me a pencil sharpener. Next. You can see this little bit here is part of the musculature. There's the wrist bone, all the tendons in the wrist. Oh, that doesn't look right. I think we need more hands back here, hand stuff back there. And we can put the ring on there. Now that's a challenge. Let's see what I can do with this in 2 minutes. There's the wedge. And what is she doing, they think? And I say, I don't know what I'm doing. The weirdest thing happened to me this morning. Huh. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Now, I was driving, and my partner was talking about having taken this walk down this train track, and where he came out. So the train track was this area that people don't hang out in much. So he was describing the area to me, and all of a sudden, I didn't know where I was in space. I thought I'd turned the wrong corner. I thought I was driving down the wrong street. It was this weird sort of like like my timeline glitched or something strange because he was describing another place to me and I was trying to visualize it at the same time I was driving and trying to get to the highway. It was really weird. I don't know why I brought that up, except that I didn't know what I was doing. It was quite a bizarre experience. That doesn't usually happen to me. I usually know pretty much, well, I never know exactly where I am or what time it is at any given moment, but I can generally have an approximation. It's that darn time-space continuum disruption field. It mostly messes around with me in time. Space isn't quite so bad. Oh, didn't quite get it done. Oh, that's lovely. All right, we'll do a few more. And then, did you guys want to do more hands and feet maybe for longer, or do you want to go ahead and do the still life, or do you care? Or do you have any other special requests? I do like special requests. Okay. Everybody needs to practice hands. Just remember they arch together. They have a nice geometry. They make sense. They really do. See, so here's the bottom part of the hand. Here's the top part of the hand. And often you can get away with just drawing a couple of, not even all the fingers. Sometimes just an indication that this pose is a little hard because the fingers actually don't go down as far as you think they do because the knuckles are here. Yeah, it's because the flesh of the fingers stops here, but the knuckles are down here. And we can't see her thumb. Here's a fun fact. Women usually have a shorter ring finger and a longer index finger, and men usually have a longer ring finger and a shorter index finger. Not always, but in general. There's exceptions to every rule. But yeah, they can be exactly the same length. It also depends on if you're looking at them this way, palm forward, or palm down. They can seem like they're different lengths, but in general, women's hands have shorter ring fingers and longer index fingers, and men have longer ring fingers and shorter index fingers. It's one of the few real changes to the skeleton that happen based on effects of hormones and the developing child, like wider hips on women and narrower shoulders. Not always true. There's always exceptions, but generally true more often than not. All different, all your fingers are. Is it, if you, it probably is the same length depending on how you hold it. If it's significantly longer, like if your index finger, if your middle finger and your ring finger are the same length, exactly the same length, it means you're a werewolf. Yeah, that's not really fair. It could be shorter or longer than they're supposed to be. Like I said, it's a generalization. It's not an absolute. So I don't want to draw this one. This is boring. Come on, give me something more interesting. Lycanthropes? Yeah, lycanthropes are cool. Fine. Oh, look, this is a good one. Let's do this one. And look, her ring finger is longer than her index finger, but it could be the way she's holding her hand. She's kind of like twisting it out. So that would change the length of her fingers. Or it could be a guy with long nails and nail polish. I don't know. Just saying. Could be. But be that as it may, here is the wedge of the hand, and here are the fingers. Sometimes all you have to get is just that little bit, the difference between the wedge shape of the palm of the hand and the arching of the fingers, and get it to be about the same length, and it kind of suggests a hand. So you can put in the fingers, but don't overdo that part of it because it can be distracting. And then we get some shadow here. Looks like a really unpleasant way to hold your hand, actually. And the thumb is a completely separate creature. And look at that. The wrist is actually oval, almost squarish, but kind of oval. So here we go with the wedge part of the hand, the palm of the hand, and notice her fingers kind of curve back a little bit, like they're hyperextensive. And she's tucking her thumb in. And look at the curve of the forearm and the arm. It's not just straight. So wedge shape of the foot now tends to be more of like a pyramid shape here, with the toes as being a short extension. Unless you have monkey toes like my daughter. She's got big long monkey toes. They're not my toes. They can be really useful sometimes, right? You can pick things up with them, right? Yep. Prehensile toes. I actually do have very flexible toes, and I like my flexible toes. But what was I going to say about toes? I was going to say something funny about toes, and I can't remember now what it was. Toes are just funny. They're just weird. They can be very beautiful, or they can be really ugly. Depends on what kind of shoes you wear, I guess. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. When I first met my half-sister, I was a teenager, and I had never met her before. We have the same father. And I looked down at her feet because we went to the pool or something like that, and I was like, "Oh my God, she's got my feet. Nobody else in my family has feet like mine." So I realized that I got my father's feet, and she got my father's feet. And before, other than that, all of my brothers and sisters had totally different feet. It was the weirdest feeling. It was like looking at my own feet on somebody else's legs. Very strange. Boy, they're really going with this hairy-legged dude with the toes, aren't they? Let's see. Let's do the far leg. Figures. Okay. Well, I have to say that my significant other has more than his fair share of the hair on this planet. It's an interesting phenomenon. Oh, this is really cool. That's one of the things that you can really take advantage of. Like if you arch that in a little bit and you put the other side of the foot, you don't see it on this guy, but you could definitely put that in there and give the foot much more elegant shape by giving that little bit of an arch in the foot. Don't forget the ankle. Just a little bit of the far side of it, and then the front of it is like that. Just a little bit. Sometimes just seeing the inside of the foot. You don't see it on, like I said, you don't see it on this model, but if you're conceptualizing it, go with the thing that works for you. Even this foot. This guy's got pretty good calves for a guy. Some guys just have sticks for calves. I don't understand that, but some guys have sticks for calves, right? So before we finish the foot and hand exploration, I'm going to show you some interesting things about ankles. Until then, like drawing a mitten, let's do the bottom hand. And then I'll show you the structure of an ankle, because that's really interesting. Okay, so here we go with the they say if you break it, if you twist it once, you'll do it again and again. It gets worse. It's like you stretch out the tendons or something, and you're more likely to twist it again. Kind of sucks. Both ankles at the same time? And did you have to go in a wheelchair after that? And cried. I just sat down and cried. Stiff upper lip and all that. I remember watching a gymnast who did something to her ankle but still managed to finish the competition. But man, that must have hurt. So did you actually crack the bone all the way through, or did you like put like a hairline fracture in it? Fibula? The tibia or the fibula? The tibia. That's the, well, it depends on how you look at it. So, uh, something something you didn't. Damn those bikes. A mind of their own. The funnest thing about going to the doctor for me is looking at all the cool charts on the wall of different things that can go wrong. This is not working. Why is this not working? Because I'm not paying that much attention to it. All right. Let me see if I can just at least get this. And then I'm going to show you the structure of the ankle because it's a pretty interesting thing. So here's another example of where you just draw one side of the toe and let the other side take care of itself. Eh, it's interesting, but it doesn't look all that great. But at any rate, so it just how should I do this? Let me see if I can bring up a foot. Foot. Yeah, yeah, it works great, doesn't it? There's other things that you can do like with hands, like if you're just doing like if you're drawing a person's arm, you can do this thing like if you imagine just you know doing something with a hand that makes it just like a gesture. The arm always has this sense to it, and then the shoulder, like you can do this, and then the wrist, you can do like the thumb goes one way and the finger goes the other way, and you can really just indicate a hand without being, without getting into too much detail. It's great for conceptual work when you're just trying to sketch out something, and you don't have to go into too much detail. So if you can just find the rhythms of the body, that's a very feminine hand. Um, and remember where the overlaps are. That's why we study the anatomy, is so we know where the overlaps are. You can get a fairly passable, quick hand. And the same with the foot. And so the leg comes down, toes, and we get that heel bone in there, and the arch of the foot, and you're good. You're golden. So let's look at this here. That's not a brilliant picture. One of the things I've found most challenging about studying anatomy is good reference. Often it's pretty crappy. Oh, that is weird. What the heck? Flat feet when your arches fall? That's an extreme. That's totally extreme. Or the weird things when your grandmother's feet go all funny on one side. Um, this one's not too bad. Let's look at this one. That doesn't show the ankle. Now, let me get my book. I have a really good anatomy book that I been using. And then we'll go back to drawing the torso. Let me just, this one book. I'll always fall back on the anatomy book because you never can be sure about what someone has posted, some random person has posted on the internet. It could just be crap, So always take it with a grain of salt. Although x-rays are wicked cool. I have some x-rays. I always beg the doctors for my x-rays. Now they just print them out on a piece of paper. Yeah, this is a good one. This is, I don't know where I got this. I think I bought it used. Used bookstores are great. Well, I think they're a dying breed. Bones. Hmm. Well, look in the medical section. Don't try to do the bones. I want the bones. Arm and forearm. How come I don't have the leg? What the heck? Well, they've got bones of the foot, but not a very good view of it. And that's the outside. And that's the inside. Get those great big ginormous um, picture books like coffee table books. Here's who's it by? Not familiar. That works. That's an awful drawing of the bone. Look, they don't even show the difference between the tibia and the fibula. Ugh, frick. Forget that. Goodbye, Chrome. I hate you. All right. So the interesting thing about the ankle is, okay, so let's start with the pelvis. You know, if you have problems with your feet, you're going to have problems with your hips. You guys all know that already, right? So we have the pelvis. Pardon? Age? No. No, it's just like my brother has my brother has flat feet and he has hip problems. So with the hip, the whole pelvis is an interesting thing because it has, you know, the middle of the figure is at the base of the pelvis, which is pretty much where the joint of the leg is, the lower leg. So if you keep that in mind, and the bone angles in, the femur angles in from the front view, you'll see it angle and it gets wide at the base where there's a big ball. This is the neck of the trochanter. It bends around. Like, I don't know why it does that, but it does. And if you look at it from the front, here's the hip bone. The femur actually curves like this and has a big ball on the knee part of the joint. At that point, it runs into the tibia, which is shaped kind of, I ran out of room. All right, so here's the bottom of the knee joint, and here's the tibia. It's kind of flat on top, and it has like a sharp front, and it's like a wedge drawing it from the front. Here's the patella right here. So you have these two round things. It's almost like two knuckles that are on this flat surface. So you have the round part of the leg bone, something like this, and the flat part of the shin bone is something like this. And the knee, the femur rocks across it. So it's not like it rotates on there. It actually just rocks. You know what I mean? Like a rocking chair. It it tilts across that surface. And if you look at, I have an X-ray around here somewhere of a radiogram where they're moving the leg while the person's being X-rayed. They don't do that anymore, but the patella floats up and down the leg. It's really gross. It's just like you look at it and you just go, "Oh my God, that is so weird." All right, so this is the median, which is the inside, and this is the lateral, which is the outside. On the outside, you have the fibula, which is a smaller bone that goes on the outside. So these two primary bones, the tibia, which is razor shaped, and the fibula, they both come down to make a kind of a hook around the ankle. And I always forget which is higher. I have to feel my own ankles to remember which one's higher. The one on the inside is higher. So this is the tibia's ankle, and this is the fibula's ankle. And they fit onto the tarsus, which is the bone that comes up into the foot. So essentially what you've got, if you could draw it mechanically, you've got this. Oh, I'm not doing a very good job of this. Darn it. It's like I'm trying to draw this in 3D and it's not letting me do it because I'm stupid. Okay, here we go. So it makes like a hook, you know? And then the tarsus, and it's almost like there's a thing in there that would capture the tarsus, and the tarsus rocks in between those two ankle bones. So these two bones on the ankle are really important. And you look at it from the side, Got one ankle here. The other side you can't really see. Get some more detail on that. I need to study the foot more. You're right. Definitely need to study the foot more. I've drawn really intricate feet bone things, but it's the ankle bones that always throw me off, just like the wrist bones. I get confused and I just like, oh, well, there's a bunch of bones in there, right? So from the outside, you'll see that the calcaneus, which is the heel bone, comes out something like this. The tarsus sits on top of that and inserts into the ankle joint. And then you get, it's like a navicular, there's a bunch of funky bones just like there are in the wrist, and some smaller bones along here. And this is, say this is the outside of the foot. Then you get the metatarsals, which angle down. So if you look at the front of the foot, the metatarsals go like this in an arch, and the outside ones are low to the ground, and the inside ones are high. They come down, and then there's the joint of the toe, and then the toe goes like this. So you have this arch of the foot, and this arch thing that it makes is a springy thing that keeps you from, it's like a shock absorber. So all parts of the foot are really important. So this is why you need to make sure that you have a good triangular shape for the foot. You look at the foot from the front, you're going to get something like this, the big toe, the little toe, the arch of the foot going up towards the inside, and then you get the ankle. So if you can keep that in mind, and then from the top view, you have the bone of that's the joint of the big toe, and the toes arch off this way, and then they go around the heel. So it's not that crazy once you understand the structure of it. Okay,